We've seen how to assign a password to our console line, to our VTY lines, to a local user. You might remember I created a username of Cisco and a password of Cisco. The challenge with those passwords is that as we look at those passwords in our running config, for example, username Cisco, password Cisco, that's in clear text. If we look at our line configuration, password Cisco, it's in clear text. That's a challenge. There is a way to encrypt those passwords, and that way if somebody's looking over our shoulder, they're not going to be able just by casual observation to see what the password is. Now I say by casual observation because if a person does get possession of one of the encrypted passwords, the type of encryption that's done is not very strong. Let me demonstrate. Let's go in and give the command service password hyphen encryption. And by doing that, if we look at our running config now, you'll see that those passwords that were in clear text are now encrypted. Here, just a moment ago, we saw this as plainly saying Cisco. If we scroll down some more to our line configuration, these said Cisco earlier, and now they do not. And if somebody were just glancing over my shoulder, they wouldn't be able to see that string of characters and know that it was Cisco, but it's very easy to crack. On the internet, you can do a search for Cisco password cracker, and these passwords, I'm not talking about the enable secret password because that's not even an encryption, that's a hashed value. But for these passwords that have a password level 7, those are easily broken. Let me prove it. Like I said, there are several utilities on the internet. I'm going to demonstrate one for you. I'm going to copy that string of characters. Let's go under edit and say copy, and let's go to a little utility I downloaded earlier today and paste that in. And as soon as I paste it in, notice what it says. It takes no time at all, and it says the decrypted password is Cisco. So it's very easy to crack, but at least this does add an extra layer of security to keep somebody from determining your line passwords or your username passwords just by casual observation. We may want to display a message as somebody is attempting to log into our switch, and I hesitate to call it a welcome message because we might not want to welcome everyone into our switch. If you said, welcome to switch SW1, and some malicious user attempted to gain access, unauthorized access to the switch, they might be able in court to say, well, the switch said welcome, I was welcomed into the switch. Let's be careful with the words we choose for our message. Maybe something like authorized access only. Violators will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, or something along those lines. Let me demonstrate for you what is called a login banner. In global configuration mode, I'm going to say banner. And we've got different types of banners, by the way. A couple that are commonly used are MOTD, that's message of the day. And what we're talking about right now is login. These act similarly. You may not have the MOTD banner show up if you're using a specific method of connecting. If you're connecting via Secure Shell version 1, for example, the MOTD banner may not show up, but the login banner may show up. You might want to do a little bit of trial and error to determine in your environment, is the banner you've configured showing up using your connection method via Telnet or Secure Shell version 1, Secure Shell version 2, or the console. For the CCNA exam, however, I primarily want you focused on the login banner. I'm going to say banner login, and we give a delimiter to say where the message starts and where the message stops. I'm going to use a character, a delimiter, that's not going to appear in the message. For example, I'll use a $sign. I'm not going to use a $sign in my banner message, so that will be my delimiter. In other words, I give it here, and when I'm done, I'll enter the $sign again, and Cisco iOS will know that I'm done. Let's enter our message. Let's say authorized access only, exclamation point. And to say that I'm done, I'm going to give the $sign character again. And now, let's see what it looks like when we try to connect. I'm going to connect via Secure Shell. Let's fire up our PuTTY session. We'll say open. And notice, before I give my username, we see our login banner, authorized access only. So I'm being warned that if I'm not authorized to log into this device, then I shouldn't be logging into this device. You may want to consult the legal department in your company to come up with appropriate wording that you would want to give to discourage unauthorized users from connecting to your equipment. But that's how we set up a login banner on a Cisco Catalyst switch. Let's see how to configure speed and duplex on a Cisco Catalyst switch port. And the speeds supported are going to vary Cisco Catalyst switch model to switch model. On this particular model of Cisco Catalyst 3750 series switch, I've got primarily fast Ethernet ports. In other words, they run at 100 megabits per second maximum. So I've got an option. I could set the port speed to either 10 megabits per second or 100 megabits per second. If I had a gig port, I could set it to 10, 100, or 1000 megabits per second. Some switches have 10 gig ports. Context-sensitive help can tell us what is available. Also, we can configure duplex. Full duplex allows us to transmit and receive at the same time. Half duplex is what is required if we're connected to something like an old hub, where we're sharing a collision domain with multiple devices. That's probably not what we're doing these days, but if we are, we should be running in half duplex because that allows CSMA CD to work, carrier sense multiple access with collision detection. CSMA CD not needed with full duplex. Keep in mind that speed and duplex can both be set to auto. We can auto negotiate with the other side of the link what speed we should use and what duplex we should use. And some people like to hard code the speed and duplex for ports that are connecting to other infrastructure devices. In other words, if you control the device at each end of the link, maybe you don't want to risk auto negotiation not working. I've seen auto negotiate not work before. And some people prefer to administratively control the speed and duplex on ports, again, connecting to other infrastructure devices. Ports going out to the users, though, user-facing ports going out to the cubicles, to the offices, where a user might be connecting a computer, a laptop, something like that. We're not quite sure how that device might be configured. In that case, many people prefer to use auto for those types of connections. Let's see how to set this up. Let's go into, for example, interface fast Ethernet 1/0/5. And what options do we have for setting speed? 10, 100 auto. I'm just going to set this to auto. What options do we have for duplex? And we have auto, full, half. I'll set this to auto as well. Oh, and there's another parameter that's really useful here, and that is setting up MDIX. It may be enabled by default on your Cisco Catalyst switch, but here's what MDIX does. MDIX, here's what it stands for. It stands for Media Dependent Interface Crossover. And if you think about the wires inside of an RJ45 connector, the pins 1, 2, 3, and 6 in that connector are used for Ethernet. 2 wires, 2 pins are used for transmitting, and 2 wires are used for receiving. What if you interconnected a couple of switches with a straight through Ethernet cable? That would mean that the transmit wires on one side connected to the transmit wires on the other side. That's not what we want. We want transmit on one side connecting to receive on the other side. Well, if we enable MDIX, that allows the port to automatically detect which wires, which pins in that RJ45 connector should be used for transmitting and which should be used for receiving. Here's how we enable MDIX. MDIX, and the only option is auto. We can check how we're currently set by doing a show interface followed by the interface identifier, fast Ethernet 1/0/5, and we can see that we're set to auto duplex and auto speed. Nothing's currently plugged in, but when it is, we will attempt to automatically negotiate both speed and duplex and which pins should be used for transmission and which pins should be used for reception. We've been doing quite a bit of configuration on our Cisco Catalyst switch. After we've made these changes, they take effect immediately. However, if we were to turn the switch off and then back on, changes would be lost. If we want these changes to survive a power cycle, if we want to store or to save those changes, we need to do that by copying what's in the running configuration, what's in RAM right now, what's reflected on screen. We want to copy the running configuration to our startup configuration. The startup configuration lives in NVRAM. That's non-volatile RAM. Non-volatile RAM, it does survive a power cycle. To do that, we can give this command. We can say copy running-config space startup-config. And it says, what's the destination file name? Is it startup config? Yes, it is. And we've saved our configuration. And that was quite a bit of typing in order to copy my running config to the startup config. Usually we'll use a shortcut. We could say copy run, and I'll just do a tab key, and it types out the rest, a space star, and a tab key types out the rest. We could do that. we wouldn't even have to type the tab key if we were certain we were typing in the correct commands. We could simply do a copy run star. That would do it. And one other way that some people do it, in older versions of Cisco iOS, prior to the copy running config, startup config command, there was a write memory command. And even though Cisco would recommend that we do the copy running config, startup config, many people prefer to do write mem because it can be abbreviated with only 2 characters. We can simply do a WR, which is short for write memory. We press enter, and by doing a WR, that also copies the running config to the startup config. But keep in mind, the Cisco best practice, the recommendation from Cisco, because they may get rid of the write mem command at some point in some version of Cisco iOS, we should get in the habit of doing a copy run star. That's going to save our running configuration to our startup configuration.